And hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode, If Not Now Wen. In today's show, I am really excited to welcome my next guest speaker, Michael Dalley, to join us today. With over 25 years in business management, sales, and marketing, today he is the Chief Revenue Officer at Aerial Vantage, an AI computer vision platform for aerial imagery. Previously, he served as CEO of the same company, leading successful spin-off, increasing revenue by 300% as a CRO at Dalley Social. As an MBA graduate and Air Force veteran, today he's here to share his insight on driving growth and innovation. With that, my friend, please join us to welcome Michael to the show. Thank you so much, Michael, being here. I am so honored.
It's my honor. Thank you.
So
thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell us, how does all the magic begin for you, Michael?
Well, as you made mention, Wen, before we got started, that you created your second life in the United States after immigrating from China. And I too, except further back, grew up in Detroit. So really it begins the son of an automobile mechanic in inner city Detroit with not a tremendous amount of options, a very hardworking father, a stay-at-home mother. My mother didn't get her driver's license until she was 32. So a family of immigrants, Polish and Italian and German and English. So I'm sort of a mutt, right? But my mother was Italian and Polish, very hot-blooded human. So her being at home wasn't a great benefit to us because we grew up with an interesting brand of discipline. I was a child of the 1970s, a teenager of the 1980s. So this is certainly different times. So fast forward to sort of my intermediate school years. I was a terrible student, a marginal athlete at best. So my father decided he was going to get me out of the city, and so we moved north. In sort of the if you're familiar with Michigan, right, sort of right in the middle.
Yes.
So a tiny little town, nobody knows where it is, 3,200 people. And so my father had sacrificed his business and went to work for the public school system in this small town and ended up taking care of the buses and the school maintenance. And I was staying out of trouble, right, being in a smaller school, and actually was able to start a game or two in athletics because there wasn't the level of athleticism as I traveled north. So I was actually able to have a few minutes of playing time.
Nice.
In the middle of that, sort of a defining moment for me was my mother passed away when I was young, when I was 11, and she passed away of a brain aneurysm. And I recall that being so poignant, in my head, like just that life can end at any second. And if you're 37 years old and you can die of this and with no sort of warning, just come home and pass away. I learned then that I was destined for more than what that small town had to give me. And I knew that I had to be the one in my family. I did. My brother was a black sheep. Can I say that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I don't know anymore. I got to be careful. And my sister, met a young man early and married and had children and has a fabulous life. But I knew it wasn't for me. And I knew that I didn't have the grades or the athleticism to have either of those carry me to university, nor did I have a family that had the money to co-sign on that. Taking on debt wasn't an option for me. So I joined the United States Air Force. So I was 18 years old, fresh-faced, really never had left Michigan at that point, and found myself in San Antonio, Texas in July. Wow. In 104-degree heat. But I knew, perseverance, get through it, get through boot camp. And I knew right away when I got out of boot camp, I wanted to get overseas because I had very limited cultural exposure. It was a very hollow view of the world. Coming up in Detroit, there's a very distinct demographics in Detroit. You grow up around basically four groups of humans. And I knew that there was different food. I knew there was different things to do, different things to see. So I ended up getting stationed over the UK. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So I was 21 years old at this time. And I was in school full time, working at night, working on aircraft, and going to school during the day. So I had a very non-traditional route to education. I started with the global campus of University of Maryland. So funny story, during the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, I took statistics in a tent at Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey.
Wow.
Worked on planes during the night, took statistics during the day, caught a nap in a cot with 8 other men in a tent, and then went back to working on planes and did that for a few years. Once everything settled down,
Wow.
I came back to the States and moved to College Park, Maryland, and finished up my degree.
Wow.
So I had about another 2 semesters. So I had a little bit of the traditional sort of a collegiate experience.
That's quite a determination there. And I'm curious, Michael, at the moment you said you are not quite, academically inclined at the moment. What changed you as you joined Air Force that you determined to finish your degrees?
My father, he always, I hear his voice in my head, rest his soul. He's passed away as well too. But he always said, Michael, you have to get that piece of paper. Like you're going to have to get that piece of paper. Otherwise, you're going to end up right back in Detroit or right back in this small town. You're going to be working at a factory, and your prospects will be bleak as far as creating any kind of wealth, any kind of generational wealth that we were never able to create. My Uncle Kenny became a big inspiration to me the minute that I hit soil in the United States. And finished up my degree. My uncle at the time was the chief revenue officer of NCR Corporation in Minneapolis. And he said, hey, I know some people. I can't get you in now at NCR because you're too green, right? You don't have any experience doing this. Just have a degree, but I can get you a job. So he made a couple of phone calls, and I found myself as 100% commissioned rep for a company called QBS Software.
Whoa.
A reseller of supply chain, ERP, manufacturing, execution. And
100% commission.
100%.
And
No salary.
You're not worried about it.
That's the biggest 8-year earnings years of my life as a 100% commission rep. And I was in my 20s, right? So I said, okay, I want to go get my MBA. So I was selling software during the day, going to school at night. I started.
Probably so easy for you.
I had to start going to school at night and on the weekends, the 9 to 12 Saturday class, right? And it was physical attendance. There was no online learning at this point. This is 1997.
Wow.
Right. This is
Which school?
University of Detroit Mercy.
Nice.
So between 97 and 99, I had to show up.
That's so hard.
Winter on what they call the Southfield Freeway, which is called the ditch. You're basically trapped. And if it snows and you have a blizzard,
God.
you lived in Chicago.
Yeah, oh my God.
So you get it, right?
Not missing it.
Yeah, you get it. You're not missing it. So my job consisted of walking up and down Warren Avenue on the sort of intermediate sort of central Detroit area and knocking on the back doors of machine shops and having a supervisor with a hard hat let me in or not. Or not, I say, right? And I would go in and see if someone's hand cranking on a CNC lathe.
So what's your secret on that? You had to build trust in a second. You knock on the door, the person see you. Hello, my name is Michael. What's your secret on that?
I bought a polo shirt with their logo on it.
Wow.
Yeah. I bought a polo shirt with their logo on it.
Every single customer? That's a big commitment.
Well, I had about 23 or 24 customers, so I had a good collection of golf shirts. And they thought it was funny, actually, because they knew I didn't work there, but, I was representing their brand, changing in the car, mind you, on the way in. And then it sort of was an icebreaker. They'd look at the logo on my shirt and go, well, do you work for me or not? And then they'd realize I'd introduce who I was. And I'd say, hey, listen, numerical controls is here now. You're sort of behind the curve. You're not meeting your SLAs with the OEMs, with Ford, GM, and Chrysler at that time. And you need to, increase your operational efficiency so you can send more orders out in full to your customers so they can rely on it. And then the cars end up on the lot and dealers are happy and car buyers are happy. So it was, I always like to look at things sort of from the end game and then sort of reel it back to just small little pieces. And
we'll start with end in mind.
End in mind. And the small little pieces where I know I have to knock on this door and I know I have to get these deals.
Were you ever afraid?
Oh, yeah, I was always afraid.
You're always afraid?
Always. I think if you don't have a healthy amount of fear, you become careless.
So how did you move forward when you're just about to knock and maybe you freeze in a moment thinking, what am I going to say? How do you going to...
Breath work.
You actually...
I'm a big student of Sadhguru. I'm a big student of Eastern practice.
Yeah.
As it relates
what
to...
kind of Eastern practice?
Meditation, yoga, Pilates, a lot of breath work, a lot of mindfulness. We tend to get carried away with ourselves that can impact our sort of physiological makeup. And you realize that the vast majority of it's just coming from a signal from your head. And you have to just figure out a way to calm it. So for me back then, it was breath work. And I always was big into fitness. So that kept me sort of there, at least a baseline there mentally. And I knew I needed to do it to get to the next level. And that next level for me came with Parametric Technology Corporation, which is a publicly traded company. I had a nice run there. And we moved sort of beyond silo-stacked ERP and supply chain and manufacturing execution and moved into suites of products and more solution-oriented. And really, it was the first indoctrination that I was able to get of corporate selling, of true corporate selling, right?
What do you differentiate?
Process.
Okay.
We didn't have a process my first 8 years. We were winging it, right? I mean, we sort of, well, this worked and this sort of didn't work. And that's when sales folks were sort of looked at more as artists versus scientists. And I was sort of part of that sort of initial generation that said, well, wait, time out. We're smart too. Like, I'm not very smart, but we're smart too, right?
I understand.
So we can make this a little bit more scientific. So I was exposed to early versions of Medic. I'm sure you're familiar with Medic. So that came from PTC.
Wow.
And so that sort of ingrained the discipline of forecasting methodology and pipeline integrity to the discipline of being in the military to the discipline of knocking on those doors.
That's perfect combination.
You sort of get there. And then I decided I sort of wanted to chase the rabbit a little bit. I wanted to go after the startups. And that's when, the whole what are stock options? And then you realize how painful the employee equity pool is. And you're like, what? I thought I was going to get rich and you don't, right? But
sometimes you do.
Sometimes
most
you
don't.
Well, it depends how you define rich.
Yeah. How do you define rich then? Or success?
Purpose and peace.
What's your purpose?
To leave the world a better place than I found it. And sort of that's where I'm at in my career. So, after I'm approaching my 5th successful exit, thank you. And it's been a wonderful ride. And honestly, the pain of not living up to the expectations that I set in my head of how things were going to turn out versus using the empirical data that was right in front of me. I think a lot of times we fail as leaders just to open our eyes, right? And see things for what they are versus what we want them to be. And I think if you curb your expectations, you're not in this endless longing and loathing cycle where there's this constant pursuit. I don't want to be in pursuit. I want to be at peace. I know.
Are you at peace today?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
What's the center to that peace?
I had to own up to a lot of my own shit.
As we all do.
Yeah, I had to learn to forgive myself for things that I did that made me feel guilty and inevitably made me feel shame. So there's a process of not only asking for forgiveness devoid of result from someone or something that you harmed, but then there's the more painful process of figuring out a way to forgive yourself. And so when you're caught there, you can never be at peace. No matter what your externalities are, no matter how much money you've had. I've had more money than I would have ever dreamed of when I was young, several times, and I've lost it several times. So taking those risks and losing and feeling that pain taught me a lot more than any success that I've ever achieved. I learned more from the tears and the pain and the agony.
What is the biggest agony along your career, if you care to share? Is it an event or a moment that come to your mind?
There are times in life when you have to know who to trust. And there are disappointments when you invest trust and the reciprocation of said trust isn't balanced. And it's a failing of self. It's why didn't I recognize this for what it was? It doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad. It just means that I should have seen this and I didn't because I was blind, because my expectations of this reciprocal nature of my investment of trust and my investment of integrity wasn't reciprocated. Now, there's been times when I've been on the other end of that, where I didn't deliver integrity and I didn't deliver authenticity. Those are the moments that create the guilt, and the downstream impact is the shame. So once you figure out how to not create rather, I call it exhaust. In like a car, I love electric cars, but I just love them. I just love them. I love everything about them. So when you operate a gasoline car, there's exhaust, right? If your car runs good and your engine is clean, the person behind you won't be polluted. If you create bad exhaust because your engine is bad, not only are you going to choke and die, but so is the person behind you. So you have to, and what cleared me up, and it took until I was in my mid 40s to sort of figure it out. And now I'm in my 50s, and I'm looking at my last run, wherever that may be, wherever that may lead me. I'll be looking at that post exit. How do I leave this industry in a better place than when I found it? Right? How can I lead the best way I can lead? And it's more intimate for me. I much more enjoyed frontline leadership in sales and SaaS than I liked being a CRO.
Can you define that? Frontline leadership versus backline leadership?
Yeah, you lose a sense of what's going. Not only do you lose a sense of what's going on in your business, what's really going on in your business, right? Because as you're well aware with your startup experience, the most important thing that you can deliver to your board and to your CFO is your forecast. So you have to have, and this is where this word integrity keeps coming back. Like pipeline integrity is critical. You can't manage if you don't know where in the pipeline things are getting stuck. Like, so, hey, we've got good lead flow coming into the top of the funnel. What's happening once we get to discovery, between discovery and say proof of concept, right? Or, expanding the larger cast of characters to get better buy-in for a larger enterprise transaction. Like, how do we know if we're removed from that? It's difficult because you're getting your information second and sometimes third hand. And I was very active as a CRO, like being in the deals, but you're getting pulled around, right? Frontline, you have a revenue number, right? And you get your hand slapped for turning in a dumb expense report. But I mean, for the most part, right, you're really a dumb one. But your frontline is just revenue, right? So here's my number. Here's 1.5 per rep. I've got 6 reps. Let's go get it. And then I know exactly what's going on in their life. I know if they have a bad day, I can be empathetic, and I can be a shoulder. I would do anything for my reps, but that needs to be reciprocal, and it has to be 100%. And so if that's the perfect algorithm to having a wonderful career. When you have that intimate relationship with your sellers in this case, and having an intimate relationship with your customers. So you understand how value is being inherited on the other end of your sellers as well. And you get to have a real genuine and authentic connection with their leaders. And then you're bringing in your leaders and they're bringing in their leaders, and then it just magic happens.
Win, win, and win. Everybody win. Everybody
wins. And you have to feel that way. A lot of folks in our profession come at it with the idea of just chasing money. Yes, this can be a fantastic career. You can change the trajectory of your family line if you do it right and you manage your money right on the back end. And that can be a trick when you're young. You give a lot of people money when they're young, they tend to do some ridiculous things with it. However, if they chase creating value for their customers in making the champion on the other end wildly successful and promotable, right? Change their family, right? So when you go in, let's find out how you make money. What are your KPIs? How do you get paid? How can I enable you with our platform to help you reach your KPIs? And why haven't Any other vendors sort of got you there to the land of milk and honey, if you will, right? Understand how they are motivated, because it matters. Don't just think of how you're motivated. You have to get out of your own head, right? Because you don't matter. You don't matter. You're just you're dust. We're space dust, and I'll be space dust in 15 years. I'll be space dust. So we're completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things as it relates to the planet, the universe, the galaxies.
Matters.
We are just space dust. So think about someone else, and if you chase that, creating lasting value and genuine relationships with your customers, and our solution as an enabler, not will long after you're gone, they'll be still paying the renewals. That's the beauty of thing about SaaS for the founders and for the investors and for the C-level, is even if the rep's not there, it's the gift that keeps giving, right? So it's just like life insurance model. Go in and sell 2 policies and you paid your way by, right? So it's the same sort of attrition model that has been going on. And you can thank Mark Benioff and Salesforce for that, right? That when there was enterprise, perpetually licensed software deals, they really needed high-end strategic sellers to go in, because it wasn't just a renewal, and you didn't have an army of customer success managers and account managers that were going in after your wake, right? Your wake from the deal. And then you move on to the next transaction. It's not how it was back in the old days. You had 15, 23 accounts, and you were at their house on Thanksgiving, right? I mean, some of them, right? It was a lot of moving around, but you were very engaged with them. But they let you in because they knew you genuinely cared. I'm blessed to have had some amazing leaders to come up under. Like, I've had some of the best leaders in the industry that I was able to be mentored by. And many of them sort of in the midterm of my career were much younger than me. You look at a guy like Brian McCarthy, CRO of Rubrik. I mean, he was the president of Click. When I was there, he was 37 years old. Amazing. But you can tell why. Like, when you're around them, Tom Westoff at Hearsay Systems, my CEO at Hearsay Systems, Claire Shai. She was in Chicago and from China. And now she's like the CEO line CEO of Salesforce, right? And they invested in Hearsay, and she came with it. And she's one of the most talented human beings I've ever even met, right? So I've been very lucky.
You're such a people leader, Michael. I think you see each and every individual as they are, and also think that you can recognize the strengths within them, but more importantly, you have this brutal honest with yourself. And I think you see truth in the business, in the people, in what drive the bottom line. And I think that's one of the gifts that you're coming with.
It took a lot of failing, a lot of personal failings, a lot of disappointments.
How do you define personal failing? And then also at those moments, how do you move forward at those devastating moments?
We talked about, before we went live, we talked about the authenticity vibration. And really, authenticity wasn't even a word until that we used in business. It was used when you met with your therapist. But it wasn't really used in business until some little time ago.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the word really hits, and I think if I look back to many of my personal failings, it was usually an interpersonal relationship where I took things personal when they weren't personal. They were business, and my reaction was let's just say highly spirited. In many of these scenarios. I did grow up in Detroit, and I'm a little rough around the collar in some of those areas. So I had to sort of learn that that's not the proper way to behave. You can't behave that way. And just because someone's legitimately coaching you, for some reason the lens that I saw it from was criticism. And it took me a while to sort of understand that individual had my best interests at heart, genuinely, not only for their own success and the company's success, but also for my success and my development. And for some reason, I think it was sometime around my mid-30s, I thought I knew everything. I thought that there was nothing more I could learn. I'm 35, I'm making $500,000 a year, I don't have any debt. Like, nobody's going to tell me what to do, right? And unfortunately, everyone has a boss, and you learn those lessons sometimes harder than you want to. And it's those sort of moments where you act out of that sort of vibration of authenticity, right? The real me was sort of calm, but the reactive me was, I'm being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being attacked, right? And no, they don't care enough to attack you, by the way. They don't care. They're not thinking about you or your problems for more than the time that you're in their office, right? And then they're on to their own problems because we all have them, right? No matter what socioeconomic class we reside in, we all have problems. Life's difficult. It's not easy. It's not for everybody, right? So yeah,
That's
operating
brutal.
outside of that vibration has gotten me in some trouble.
So how do you move forward when in event of recognizing that and is challenging, I imagine, emotionally, how do you move forward, continue to drive to your goal?
It's a great question. A lot of the coaching that I've done over the years with my teams has been around a couple of themes. One is fail fast, right? If you're going to fail quick. I'm not going to raise an eyebrow if you fail. If you thought about something thoroughly and in detail oriented and you executed the strategy and it failed, good for you. Let's keep going. But fail fast. And then forgive yourself faster. Like you have to have this compressed cycle. It's like when I go to sleep at night, it's like I see the funnel, right? And it's like, how do I compress it? And that's with everything in my life. And when you get to my age, you start to think a lot more about your mortality, and you think a lot more about, I have to fail faster. I have to course correct faster. There's not a lot of time left on the planet. And so you have to, that's what sort of led me to volunteering. That's what led me to being philanthropic. That's what, led me to a lot of the things that make my heart feel good. It led me to that.
That's beautiful. What is the next thing that brought you heart joy?
The next thing?
Could be current thing, could be next thing, could be whatever that in the time sequence of joy.
So my dogs bring me great joy.
Yeah.
It's my favorite time to spend with my dogs. I have a very robust sort of personal life that also is very scheduled.
Okay.
I love to golf. I have classic cars that I love to work on. I love to fly fish. I love to go out to the coast in Corpus and fish. So, and I do it with people that I love. And they're not necessarily my family. Like my family's still all up in Michigan. And frankly, being in the software business for 28 years, they think I'm from Mars. Like they have no idea what happened to me. It's like, you went away and you were this person and you come back and you're different, right? It's like, well, I mean, good.
Are you different? What is the biggest difference along the journey that you took?
I realized how big and how small the world is in the very same time. I realized that the world is so much bigger than where I came from. But the longer that you're on the planet in your chosen profession, the smaller it gets. And so you tend to, even though your circle gets smaller as you age, that's just natural. There's folks that aren't going to make it for the haul. There's folks, unfortunately, that you have to divorce yourself from. Whether it's just something and you can have that conversation, but it's, hey, you're going a certain direction. I'm going a certain direction. These are things that don't align with my values. Love you. With love, I have to leave. I have to part. And I've had to do that a lot. And it's a discipline. It's hard. But you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
I love that quote so much.
Not my quote, obviously, but I believe it with all my heart.
Same.
You have to really be careful.
What do you think is your biggest superpower, Michael?
My biggest superpower. My capabilities on a grill, I would say.
On the grill?
On the grill. I would say my superpower is what the magic that I can create on a barbecue
So
grill.
July 4th is your day.
Yeah, it's my day. Like
Perfect.
July 4th is my day.
I love it. Since we talk about the day, I got a day once a week.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday.
Mhm.
It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
Mhm.
So since we both each got a day, we are even now.
Yeah.
With that,
Great.
Michael,
It's great.
now we know it's your day.
Mhm.
Outside of grill, what do you think is your biggest superpower that bring you become the leader you are today?
I was being facetious. I knew we were going to have a follow-up.
I
but
won't let you go. Don't worry.
But I'm really good on grill. So I would say it was, or the biggest superpower I would say is having the ability to really let my team know and have them really know that I genuinely care about them. Like that I had their best interest at heart always. So long as it's reciprocated, always have their best interests at heart. But being able to create an environment in the sales organizations that I've led that allow people to play loose. And I say that it's like a golf swing. If you golf and you're tense, you're done. Forget it. Go home. Take a Xanax. Do whatever you got to do, but don't continue to golf because you're not going to do well. You can't golf tense. You have to golf loose. And I feel the same way. And I call my sellers athletes. I always have because they are. Software sales is a sport. And the folks that participate in it are athletes. And they're the top 1% of what's out there in corporate America. It's a hard job, can be a thankless job, right? With, a lot of different moving parts, as you're well aware. And some are kinder and gentler than others. But when you're venture backed, you sort of know where that not so kind element exists, right? But shielding them from that, absorbing it. So I'd say the biggest superpower would be taking the blows, like taking the punches. Like I'm not going to let one of my sellers feel the same pressure that I'm feeling.
How do you personally handle those pressures?
Again, back to a lot of breath work, a lot of time in the gym, a lot of time on the mat, and
just find the balance.
Avoid anything that will create negative outcomes downstream. So some people turn to alcohol. Some people turn to drugs. I've had my times in the saddle with alcohol. I mean, you can't be in this business for as long as I have and not had a few run-ins with Uncle Jack Daniels. It's bad. Like, so nothing good comes out of it. So it's like, you have to learn that. And I always tell my sellers, I'm like, I call on a Friday at 4:00 and I can hear it in their voice. I'm like, hey, be easy with that. I don't, whatever, make your quota. I don't care what you do. But if you keep going down this road, you're gonna lose your family. You're gonna lose your house. You're gonna lose your family. You can lose everything. Be careful. It's a slippery slope. So that's, one thing that I like to impart on the sellers is really allowing them to play loose, shielding them from the blows, preventing them from going down a rabbit hole that would procure bad habits, because I've done it.
Michael, I think you have such a variety of experience, whether it's your personal experience, professional, overseas, domestic. I think you meet a lot of people through your business, professionally, and your military experience. I'm curious, what is one truth about people that most people don't know, if any?
That's a deep question. That is a deep question. I think many people walk around afraid. And I think that they sort of live a life in a lot of regards in quiet desperation. They're either caught between something that they want to become and something that they are, but they have crippling life responsibilities that either prevent them from taking a step toward what could be freedom for them, however they define that. I think sort of the underlying truth of most people is we all want to succeed. And I think that we all genuinely care about each other. And we want to have all boats rise in high tides. And I think if we do that and we come into it that way, we're all going to have fun together. We're all going to succeed together. And we're all going to be genuinely happy for one another and really be genuine when you encourage or you congratulate or you give accolade. I'm the first one to call people when they get promoted. I'm the first person to I have friends that are promoted now that, they make 20 times a year what I make, right? When you're a private equity CEO of a startup, you're working for equity. You're working for the exit, right? You don't work for salary. You work for the exit. So you go upstream, Series C, Series D, or pre-IPO or IPO, that's a different story for them, right? Well, there's a big leap between what I'm doing and what they're doing too. So it's a very interesting way of thinking. Like I tend to think that some people secretly root for others to fail, and I've just never been that person. And I think it's a disastrous personality flaw. If you get yourself into the compare game, mm-hmm. and you get yourself into the I'm actually secretly rooting for this person to fail game. That's mm-hmm. If you do those two things, you're going to fail in life. Mm-hmm. I don't care what you get. That's irrelevant to me. I don't care. It's who you are.
Who are you, Michael?
I'm just a poor kid from Detroit that figured out a way to lift himself up and get a breath of the world, and I liked how it smelled.
That is so beautifully
I really did.
Articulated.
I've loved everything that I've done to this point.
What would you give advice to your younger self, Michael, if any?
Don't get married.
That's one advice.
Let's see. I'm kidding. Patient. I would say stay on your skis. Don't get ahead of your skis. Things will develop. And don't take things personal.
The hardest one.
Yeah, don't think things personal. The world is a very harsh place if you let it be. And you can let it be if you'd like. Or you can put up your shield and decide how you're going to consume your environment, and then how you're going to process it, and then how you're going to interact. Just because you bear the brunt of incoming fire doesn't mean you have to pull out your machine gun. You can squash it with love and kindness. You can talk them off the ledge. And that's, I feel, the people that do that really well, and I admire them greatly. And I've had reps that worked with me that taught me that lesson, right? Very good ones. Guys like Adrian Del Busso, who's still at Hearsay Systems, absolute rock star and an amazing human being. Guys like Dan Toogood, Allison Pagney, my number one rep at Hearsay. We had a really solid team of really good people, and I'm lucky that I got to be exposed to that sort of later in my career. But I got to learn sort of a lot about that.
Mm-hmm. You know people. I feel like you see people. That's why those individuals probably show loyal to you as well, that they feel honored to be your team and they want to follow you wherever you go.
Most of the time. Yeah.
I can see that.
I've been very lucky and very fortunate. I've looking forward to the next journey, post exit and see what comes. I'm looking forward to it.
Speaking of exit, Michael, in your professional life, you had take multiple companies, mm-hmm. right? Help them to quadruple their revenue and, 5 or 10x their value. I'm curious, from a business standpoint, what do you think is number 1 or 2 lessons as you probably to the fellow business owner, business leader in that path of growing the business?
It's a great question. So we're in a very different time, as you're well aware. It's not 2021 anymore. The financial markets are a disaster. Not the public markets, but the private markets are still very much in disarray. That sort of started in September of 22, really is when it really started tightening. The pursuit of high growth, no profit companies sort of dried up. So this idea of predictable, scalable, profitable revenue started to come into our purview, and we had to course correct against that. It was easier to grow a company when you had an infinite amount of resources and money, and I can hire whoever I want. And if they fail, the bottom third will wash out every quarter, and I'll just keep going. Mm-hmm. That was the model. Take as much money as you can off the street, hire up as fast as you can, and hope for the best, right? And usually it worked out. Now, fast forward to companies such as Gainfully, who was my most recent exit, where I was CRO and was actually there, when they exited to Agent Sync in Denver. And we were about $625K in revenue, and we had like a handful of people. And like you say, we 5-folded, 6-folded the revenue, and we had an identity management offering to onboard insurance producers and wealth managers that was life-changing. Agent Sync decided we're not going to build it, we're going to buy it. And so they bought us, right? The lessons I learned there is doing more with less. So how can we make each individual pillar of our business more productive? So the sellers, product, sales engineering, biz dev, the SDR crew, how can we make the ones that we have the best out there? And that came from process. So my Bible is the Challenger sale, always has been. And then MEDIC, the forecasting methodology. So we grade our deals. And again, we want to talk about what's important in the funnel. And by doing so, we have to have pipeline integrity. So you can't put garbage in and not expect garbage to come out. It's going to come out. Let's talk about why we're not getting enough leads. Let's talk about why we're not converting a first call into a demonstration. Talk about where it is. Or if it falls out at the bottom, let's talk about deal hygiene. Was it a deal or was it an opportunity? So really deal by deal, rep by rep, doing a lot more with a lot less funding, a lot less patience from the investors, and a smaller team. So being able to really scale revenue in that environment was one of my greatest accomplishments as far as I'm concerned. Because prior to that, as I made mention, we just, we need more money. Okay, let's go tell a really great revenue story. Let's talk about our pipeline. Let's talk about next quarter and next half and what we did the quarter before. And it was fantabulous. And then you also go up against the macroeconomic headwinds where, you have, it bleeds down. Transportation costs, relate to input costs. So you get a cargo, that's where it all starts. You get a cargo container from China that used to cost X. Now it costs a lot more. So you have input costs that are going up. So you have macroeconomic headwinds. You have a funding environment, high rate environment. Nobody's looking at highly leveraged tech startups to really pump a bunch of money into. It's sort of a wait and see, right? So it's when you're up against all of that, the game gets a lot tougher. And I think if you look through history in tech, if you look at 1999 and you look at 2001, like boom, boom, right? You look at 99, tech bubble burst, you look at 2001, of course, 9/11. Then you look at 2008. If you look back and you see people and they've kept continuity within this business through those years, they're the best of the best, because those are the absolute most brutal years that you could ever sell through. And if they did it and they're still around to talk about it, then they're probably pretty good. Or they're probably pretty good at politics, one or the other. If you're with a large company, you can play that game. Smaller companies, you're naked.
Yeah.
There's no, it's
Politics.
produce or perish. Right? I mean, there's no politicking. It's you either give us the revenue that we have called you for, or you're going to find a new job.
So what's the lesson?
The lesson, the lesson in all of that is don't overhire out of the gate. You don't need a CRO as fast as you think you do. I think if you're pre-seed or seed or Series A, you don't need a CRO yet. I think you need a CRO between Series A. And I'm talking to somebody that's been a pre-seed CEO, current, and seed and, Series A. I think you really need to be very cautious with your hiring and who you bring into your organization. Now you have the liberty to do that. You have the liberty to sort of pump the brakes. You don't need to scale up so hard. So when you do finally get that Series A or that stamp on that Series B, don't immediately go to market and ramp up. Because what you're doing is you're cutting some other seller's territory who's probably highly effective, and you may think they're not providing the appropriate coverage. But believe me, if there's any opportunity in those accounts, that seller, if they've been around a little while, they haven't left a single rock uncovered, right? They know what's there, right? So if you're going to bring another rep in there, carve up the territory, not only are you going to alienate and put that really good seller potentially on the job market, you're also going to make this person broke and cycle out in 6 months. So be cautious of your hiring. You don't need to scale as fast as you think you do, right? And a lot of founders, they think they're at product market fit a lot faster than they really are. Versus a private equity CEO, they'll come in and go, "You're not even close. Like, we need to work on this, right?" So
what's the true product market fit then, in your opinion?
I think if it's creating business value for the end user, I think if the customer is actually truly inheriting value from your solution, I think you've reached product market fit. And I think if you have a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 1000, logo that doesn't own your roadmap, right? Because a lot of founders, the board will know so-and-so, and then all of a sudden your first 3 or 4 deals will be from founders and board members, friends that work for large organizations, or relationships that your senior sellers or even junior sellers may have created in their journey. You end up having your customer own your roadmap. So then it's very difficult to scale off of that because the features and functions that you're building to make what you sold them whole is robbing you from what the market is actually asking for.
Opportunity cost.
You got it. And right now with the advent of AI and how quickly things have moved, it's faster than the big data movement. It's faster than the transition between on-prem and cloud. This is the fastest thing I've ever seen, this AI. And I'm blessed that I'm in it. I'm so fortunate that I'm part of this movement.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. But with being fantastic comes a lot of responsibility as well.
As always. My last question to you, Michael, is what is next chapter that you look forward to the most?
Yeah, I want to go on a long vacation. So I want to go on a long vacation and read a couple of books. And by long, I mean a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and read a couple of books and, come back and start to really look at, how does this exit? What does this mean for me? And sort of where do I go next? I would love to remain as a sales leader, within SaaS, preferably within the AI practice, computer vision, machine learning, robotics. I've gained a keen liking to robotics, especially as it relates to warehouse operations and the life-changing things that they're doing for warehouse operators. And inevitably, the end consumer will have lesser of a cost of end goods. If inventory is correct and on time and in full is brought to fruition. That's in a very exciting space for me. And it goes back to my roots in Detroit of getting really firmly re-ingrained in the supply chain. So probably be running, a team of sellers or a coast or, maybe even a company again, within that space. But I'm certainly not done yet. I'm 54 years young. Like I said, I've got another 15 years or so on the earth. So I'm going to make the most of it.
Could be 100. We don't know.
You never know. You never know.
Well, again, thank you so much, Michael, coming here to tell such an authentic, such a insightful journey. And I think you're brutal honest with yourself and what you see the world, what you see the people, how do you deliver value? How do you deliver value to not only everyone around you, but their shareholder, their community? I think those are all of the gift that you bring. And that's why, again, people want to follow you wherever you go. And that, of course, is the case. Again, thank you for
I appreciate you, Wen, very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for inspiring
for your last show. So
of course.
I really appreciate it.
Last but definitely not the least.
Absolutely.
With that, thank you.
Thank you, Wen.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we do. And we cannot wait to see you all very soon. Bye, guys.